You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network. This is the ThunderQuack Podcast, the official podcast of ThunderQuack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's ThunderQuack time!
Hello and welcome back to the ThunderQuack Podcast, the official podcast of ThunderQuack.com. I don't even know if the rigmarole applies anymore. This is one of our last episodes of the ThunderQuack Podcast as we figure out what we're gonna do next. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen,
and I'm your other host, Amanda Conkin. From afar.
We got to make the. I just have to say the Patreon producer shout out to Brian Morosky and JJ Samuel, and then we can continue.
Yes.
When last we met 4 weeks ago, we accidentally decided that we were done doing the ThunderQuack Podcast and we were going to start a new show. That's what happened. We were supposed to talk about Doctor Strange, and it
created a multiverse of madness.
A whole other thing. And then the next day I quit Star Wars podcasting.
Yeah, I saw was a bigger deal for sure. So, are you still feeling okay about that? I don't know. Lots of podcast changes.
I feel phenomenal about it. I feel fantastic about it.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are probably a dozen or so listeners that are bummed about it and that sort of thing. But I mean, for the most part, it's crickets. So it's like, nice. Yeah, you know what? Right. I think it's time. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just that, and I talked about this on the Patreon exclusive podcast that I recorded last night, because I recorded it super late because I was on vacation at the beginning of the week, and then now we record on Fridays because Amanda is in Indonesia, and so now we're recording on Friday nights. Well, it's Friday night for me. Saturday afternoon for you. So
Saturday afternoon is my lunch hour on Saturday. Yeah.
So, but yeah. So I talked about it over there. That it was just like I was feeling more dread than excitement. I was having fun doing the podcast. I mean, like podcasting with Joe. Just me and him doing the Book of Boba Fett was great. But there were two things. Is like it was having to get it out on time, having to be like part of the conversation every week, and having to like find things to talk about, right? Like having to be critical in that way. We talked about this a lot with Arrow, right? It's you know,
it ruins sort of the experience for you because you have to be critical and you can't just like enjoy things. So
and oh man, I had something else and I
sorry,
kind of lost it. No, it's my fault. Like we just like with all of those shows, it's like I just kind of like stripped away parts of the production to make it easier on myself. So there was like less barriers to entry so that I would be happy to do the podcast, to the point where like the show with Joe and I, when we were doing Faster, More Intense, it was literally just like hit record. We have nothing in front of us. We have no notes prepared. And it was just he and I just talking, which was nice because it was just the conversation that he and I would have had regardless. But at a certain point, it was like, this isn't a show. You know what I mean? Sort of like to me, I feel like it was lazy. I was getting sloppy, and it's because I didn't want to do it. Like that's what it came down to, which is actually like not that dissimilar from what we do with ThunderQuack. And I think that that's why this all kind of like just it all kind of swirled and happened in about 24 hours. Is that we had that conversation. I mean, like we were recording an episode, we were doing our thing, and we had a little bit more structure to that episode because we had like specific topics we wanted to talk about.
Right, yeah.
But then it spiraled out, turned into this other thing, and then you and I had this long conversation after we were done recording about,
right,
you know, like are we really gonna do this? Is this really like is this a real thing? And I got really excited about that, about doing that thing, about doing the Student Bodies podcast, right? More excited than I've been about any other podcast in a long time.
Nice.
And so then like it was literally like we finished that conversation. I think I was editing the podcast or whatever and went to bed, and I was just kind of thinking about it and going like, I think the biggest thing was that I was saying like, if we're gonna do this, like this has to be like, we got to stop ThunderQuack. We can't be doing both. And like I need to like dedicate time and energy to this. It's got to be like the thing that I'm doing with my free time. And then realize like I can't be giving my energy to the Star Wars podcast if that's what we're gonna do. So it was like the thought crossed my mind that night, that Monday night, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. And I woke up in the morning and was like, yeah, I'm done. Like, no, and knowing that like I would be recording with Joe, then I don't remember if it was the next day or the day after that. It was the Wednesday or the Thursday, but it was very much like huh. And then I sort of made the decision internally and was like, oh, that actually feels really nice. And then I realized like the next show is Obi-Wan Kenobi. The last thing I want to do is hamper my enjoyment of that in any way. Like this is the Star Wars show made for me. And especially after seeing that trailer where they're like, hey, are you a big fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Yes, check that box. Hey, are you also like, is the other thing that's super important to you in Star Wars Rebels? So yes, check that box as well. Cool. Well, we're gonna squish those two things together into one thing. And it was just like, okay, so yes, I have made the right decision. Yeah, I have no regrets about it. And I like, we have other places to talk about Star Wars, right? It's not like it's not like I am unable to talk about Star Wars on the internet. But yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot over the last 2 weeks, really, about what the next phase for ThunderQuack is going to look like. And then here's the thing, everybody. So buckle up on this one. When we're done the Student Bodies podcast, unless something changes between now and then, which I'm thinking it's probably about 2 years that it'll take us to run through the full series, if that's what we end up doing. When we're done, like I'm done. Like I'm finished. That doesn't mean ThunderQuack goes away. It just means that like I am going to step back in a very official capacity and hand over the keys to almost everything to somebody else, or give everybody the decision of like, hey, go, like, scatter to the four winds, like go handle your own stuff. I mean, like, I think that it's in everybody's best interest to stick together as a network, and figure out, you know, what Patreon and stuff looks like for everybody at that point. Just by virtue of the fact that like there's no reason for, you know, the Saga Continues and Epic Marvel Podcast just have separate Pinecast accounts and pay $40 a month each when they can just, you know, do that together. So I'll let everybody who's sticking around figure out what they're gonna do. I mean, like, Riverdale's got to be coming to a close, so I don't know if Riverdale gang will stick around after that show's done. So yeah, but
I didn't know. Is it ending this year? I didn't know that.
No, I don't know when Riverdale's ending. Like, I think it's one of it's. I think it's a lot like Arrow, where it's like every season could be the last season,
right.
Unless they get picked up, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that Ryan and Chloe probably are they probably sense as well that the show's winding down. I mean, it's I think it's in its 6th season right now. Like, it's not like it's had a
Wow. Yeah.
small run, right? Like, that show's been on for a long time. And it has gone through multiple sort of revamp reboots within itself. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's got maybe one more season left in it. Because I would imagine that whenever they sort of decide, whenever CW or Riverdale decides that it's done, that they'll get like they'll get like 13 more episodes, sort of thing. It's like, okay,
Right.
guys,
Yeah.
close it out, right? Finish the story. Not that the story has a beginning, middle, or end. It is just it sometimes it seems with Riverdale, and I say this with all of the affection in the world, because it is one of my favorite shows to watch. It's like Crystal and I's guilty pleasure show for sure. Sometimes it feels like with that show that they show up on set and go, okay, guys, what's the story this week? They're like, well, we've got this set, and we have these costumes. Let's go. And they just like make up a show. I am sure that is not the case. I'm sure that there are writers. I mean, I'm positive that there are writers working very hard, but it's sort of got, again, I say this with all of the affection in the world. It's kind of got like a high school theater vibe to it, of like, I don't know who let us do this with these licensed characters, but let's have fun with it. And so, you just never know from week to week what you're going to get with that show. We're way behind, and I really want to get caught up because Sabrina finally made the jump over from her show into, not as the exact same character, because spoilers for Sabrina, but well, I don't know. Does anybody care? That was like a year ago. Spoilers for Sabrina, if you care, I guess. She dies at the end.
What?
Yeah,
well, that's
she
like
dies
a really
at
big
the end.
spoiler. Boy.
Yeah, she like sacrifices herself in order to
Boy. So they were
save
like,
the
this
universe.
is done and you can't do anything else with this property.
Yeah. And then Nicholas Scratch, her boyfriend, her sort of on and off again boyfriend, he straight up just kills himself. Like,
what
he
a dark
suicide.
show. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's fantastic, but it's actually not dark. Like, this is the thing, is that like they love each other, and it doesn't matter because they've been to hell and back literally on multiple occasions. She at one point is the queen of hell, but there's a time travel thing where there's 2 of her. It's a whole thing. But
wow,
like, they
I
literally
did not
go
watch
to hell
any
and back,
of the show.
those characters.
Wow.
Sabrina, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is a phenomenal piece of television. It's unbelievably
amazing.
Good.
Amazing.
But yeah, like, the end of it is like she has to sacrifice herself in order, like, to like, which is like the consequence of all of the hijinks of everything that she does through the series, is that it's like, well, the universe requires payment, basically. Like, magic comes at a cost, and that cost is her life. So she dies, sacrificing herself to save the universe. And actually, not even just the universe, multiple universes. And he's like, cool, I literally can't live without you. I love you so much. You are stuck in limbo for eternity. I'm going to kill myself, and then I'll be stuck in limbo for eternity, and we can be stuck in limbo for eternity together. Because dead, alive, in limbo, whatever, it doesn't matter as long as we're together. Like, that's the end of the show. And I was like, beautiful. Like, what a weird, dark, like, goth, emo way to tell a love story. Like, it's very, like, they're very Romeo and Juliet in that way. It's very Shakespearean, and yeah, it was a fantastic ending. So the Sabrina that's in Riverdale is not the same Sabrina from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, but it is still Kiernan Shipka. So
yeah,
I mean, like, look, Marvel cracked open the multiverse, and it didn't just crack open the multiverse because Marvel is so influential. It didn't just do it for them. It did it for literally everything in pop culture. Because now all you have to do is say multiverse or alternate reality or parallel dimension. And people are like, oh, cool. So we can do whatever we want now. So if you're in genre TV, it's like, just do what you want. Who cares? It's like, just have fun. Yeah. Anyways, we went off on a real tangent there. But yeah, so I don't know, like I've been thinking about it over the last couple of weeks, and I think I have it planned out for what it's gonna be like when we end this show, which we've got. Oh shoot, I counted it out. I think we have 5 or 6 episodes left.
Of maybe this, yeah, because I feel like, well,
it might be 5 including this one.
I think it's including this one because I'm not here for very long, actually. Like, I've gone through many days of being here already, so.
Yeah. So yeah, because this is the episode that'll go the 14th, which means that we'll have another one on the 28th, and then the 11th, the 25th. So that's 4, 5, 6. We have 6 episodes. And the final episode will actually be us together in Disneyland.
It will be awesome. We might do something different for the 25th one though. Like maybe I'll record the week before because that is my birthday weekend and I'm going to Bali. So I don't think I'll podcast with you that weekend.
Oh yeah. We talked about that. Yeah. So okay, so we have 5 episodes left and the final episode that's actually you know what? This is actually kind of awesome and perfect. Our final episode of the ThunderQuack podcast will be in Disneyland.
That is I do love that idea.
What a series finale, right? Like that's perfect.
Nice. Yeah.
And then after that, after you get back, we're both back in Vancouver. We're gonna start the Student Bodies podcast, whatever it ends up being called. We're still workshopping names. I have a few suggestions.
Mike had like a whole plan. I'm very excited for the Student Bodies podcast. It'll be good. Yeah.
So before we get into the Student Bodies thing, because we have a lot to discuss there, what I want to throw out and get your feedback, Amanda, but more importantly, get the feedback of the people who support us on Patreon, is what Patreon looks like after this show is done. So and so here's the plan. Student Bodies will be bi-weekly, the same way that ThunderQuack is, right? So it'll be every other week. Which means that we then have the 2 other weeks in the 4-week cycle to fill in. One of those weeks will be off the record, same as it is right now, right? That'll be at the $5 tier you get off the record. The other week, instead of a podcast, this is where it like we throw a wrench into it, because like you'll still get the Student Bodies podcast. If you subscribe to Patreon, you'll get it early, right? You'll get it basically when we record, like not when we record it, but like you'll get it the Monday, and then everybody else will get it the Friday, which is even like it's even better for us because this show, like the Student Bodies one, will have no sort of timestamp on it, right? It's not topical at all. This show has been off the air for like 20 years. I don't know. It's really not a big deal. So we'll put the episode out when we put the episode out. There's not really going to be, there's no news or anything like that to cover. It's not like doing Arrow or any of those where it's like, oh, what's coming up in this world. The news is just going to be whatever we are talking about, because we're the only ones generating news for Student Bodies as far as I know right now. And I think so it's really cool. I love that freedom. And so like we're gonna I don't know, we'll figure it out when you're back what that recording schedule is going to be like. But we'll record it and then we'll put it out on the Monday or Tuesday early for Patreon, and then it'll go wide on Friday. So we'll sort of keep to that schedule still. And then then we'll have the new show is going to be very produced, very edited, which means that the unedited version will take a different form. It won't be like it is right now where Amanda and I like intentionally record a separate section. I think what'll end up happening is that you and I will probably in between segments, or just by virtue of the way that we talk about stuff, we might go off on some tangents, and I might cut
Right.
some of those tangents from the regular episode because they don't actually have
Right.
anything to do with student bodies, right? Like if
Yeah.
we get too far afield, like I'll cut that stuff back. But then if you get the uncut version of ThunderQuack, you'll get that, which means that you'll get sort of the parts of ThunderQuack that still exist just by virtue of Amanda and I having a conversation on the internet.
Yeah.
Which
Can't
will
get
be
rid of
hard
that.
to avoid,
I love
right?
that. I love that idea that it's just like a longer version of the same podcast, but without the edited bits. So
Exactly.
it's good.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
So that's all the stuff that's sort of staying mostly the same. The one piece that's going to be very different is instead of another show in that other gap week, I want to do something that's I don't know which tool we'll use to do it. I think Patreon has a tool to do this. So let me open up Patreon, and when I go to patreon.com and then new. Yeah, okay, so this is probably how we'll do this. Is that that fourth week we will do something that I want to call office hours, that is a live stream, that is literally like show up and hang out and talk. I don't know if we'll use Patreon to do it or if we'll use Discord to do it. I have to look at the tools and sort of say, because this is literally an idea that I had yesterday. If we do it with Patreon, I think that it just ends up being whoever's hosting that show is talking, and then everybody else is kind of in the chat and in the comments or whatever. That's less interesting to me because that's kind of just a one-sided conversation. It's like that's just basically a podcast. I think I want to use Discord to do it and basically be like, okay, everybody, like on Discord every fourth week, I will be on Discord in the office hours channel. Come hang out and talk to me about stuff. And like, so there'll be an hour every fourth week where you guys can just come hang out and we can talk and have an actual conversation instead of posting back and forth on Facebook or Discord or Twitter or whatever, right? In that case, it's something that's probably not recorded, so it's kind of be there or miss it. With Patreon, it's a little bit more okay. That's that's going to be archived there, right? My hope is that I can actually find a way to run it through Discord, but so that everybody can be in the conversation. Just anybody that's part of the Discord can join us. But then stream it on Patreon through the live stream tool, and then it'll be archived there, sort of thing. But I don't know, because if we're just having anybody who's on the Discord, it's like, hey, if you're talking, this is being recorded. Don't say anything dumb. So I don't know. I like I said, I literally came up with the idea yesterday, so I'm still thinking through the details on it. But before I get too far down the road, I want to know what you guys all think about that, basically. So that's it. Like that's my pitch. That's what Patreon's gonna look like. Basically starting in June.
That sounds.
And any thoughts, Amanda?
I'm super pleased by that, because one of the things that I kind of want to pivot towards, and I know that this is, again, because it's very outside of what we do at ThunderQuack, but it's sort of rethinking what the community could be. The biggest thing for us, I think, is us undertaking a, like, what does it take to make a television show? And why is television, like, how do we deconstruct television and then make it new and relevant in ourselves and as creators, because we both consider ourselves content creators, right? What goes into those kinds of conversations? And I think that this is an opportunity to expand the Patreon community to include other content creators. And maybe in that Discord chat, like, I love that idea of having, it's basically like a once a month meetup with creative minds to talk about what works and what doesn't in maybe the content that they're making or the content that we want to make. Or if we say, hey, we had this really great idea when we were deconstructing the show this week, and we just want to know if everybody thinks that that works in terms of a story structure or whatever. It could just change the conversation a little bit and be like a reflection of the pop culture that we're so immersed in, because everybody has opinions, even if they just watch the content. What makes a good story. And so thinking about it in that way makes me really excited, because I do think that we could get some more voices involved as well. Like even people that aren't necessarily focused just on student bodies, but I know a ton of awesome creators in Vancouver who, if I said that there was a once a month conversation on Discord about a project that we were developing and wanted to bounce ideas off of people and have a place for people to ask conversations and chat, that would be really cool. And I think that we could get a really awesome community going. So that would be a great way to expand that conversation, I think, and just sort of shift the model that we currently have for Patreon and have it as a new space. Like, so everybody will still get the same sort of us chatting about pop culture into the universe and putting it out there, but really opening up a feedback loop, right? Like, what is the kind of content that you want to see, and what is the kind of content that you're trying to make? So
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
really cool. Well, I in trying to figure out what we were gonna do, I wanted to try and find something that was like sort of core to what we try and do with ThunderQuack, because the show is going away, right? And because because ThunderQuack came out of you and I really having a conversation that involved the listeners, right? Like sort of those the hardcore hashtag quiver all the way listeners, that were there not for Arrow but specifically for us, right? Like to talk like to hear us talk about different things. And obviously over the years with the Facebook group and with Patreon and social media in general, that's become a two-way conversation where like our hardcore people, Sherston and Sarah Beth and JJ and I mean, like, so many people that are
quick
that are
list
now
all
just,
of
like,
the list all of the people in our community.
so many people that are now like a part of content that we produce or have gone on to create their own stuff. I mean, like Andy Babak, like he started off as one of our like dedicated hardcore fans, and now like I know he doesn't listen to most of the content anymore, because just like me with a lot of the stuff that I used to listen to, is like I don't have time for it as much because now I'm out there doing my own thing, right? And you sort of fall off with stuff, but but that's one of those things where it's like because he's not the only one. Kyle used to listen to all the Star Wars podcasts that I did, and then he became involved with it, and then he started doing his own show, and then he stopped listening to me, and so did like Jason stopped listening, and Tim stopped listening, and it's like like those guys were like the core group with Frontlines, along with like Marty and Matt Campbell, and it's like they most of them are now a part of the machine, right? They're part of ThunderQuack and doing stuff, and so they don't really listen to the show. Which like it's just it's like looking at stuff like that and saying like how do we like harness that sort of thing, build up the community even more, and give a place where we can have that two-way conversation. And then I was like, well, we could literally just have that conversation. Like we could literally just open it up and say like, guys, come hang out. Like this is when we'll be around. So if you want to talk to us about stuff, like now's the time.
I love it. Yeah.
So I know that one thing that'll be hard about that is finding a time that works, that makes sense for a lot of our listeners to join us, which will probably be very different from when we usually record. But I think the fact that it is not a show gives us a little bit more freedom of like, okay, like let's move it up to like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, as opposed to waiting until after I've put the girls to bed. Because it's like, it's the sort of thing that if Kara walks in and has something to say, it's like, okay, well now she's here, right? not that big of a deal. As opposed to like when she walks in the middle of a show, it's like, okay, are we gonna cut this part out or not?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know. I think it gives us more freedom, but it allows us to get to the core of what has made ThunderQuack specifically successful over the last few years. And it's only because of our listeners. It's only because of specifically the people that support us on Patreon. Um, and when I say that, like at any point in time, if you've supported us on Patreon, because I know that financial situations change, and there are lots of you that still listen to the content that would like to contribute but aren't in a position to do it right now, or whatever, or maybe you've just never really had the ability to do that. And I know like that, so it's not to exclude anybody who doesn't, but or can't, but just knowing that like every time that it felt like, oh, I don't want to do this, it was like, oh, but they're waiting. They're waiting
Yeah,
for
we've
it,
got a
right?
community. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that's a bit of a double-edged sword. Sometimes it can be a little bit like, oh man, but other times it's like, okay, nope, we gotta pick ourselves up and we gotta get this done. Because there are people that are awesome enough to support us on a regular basis, and they deserve content for their contribution. So yeah, I don't know, but I like, part of me just wants to sort of, I want to step back from the concept of it being like this modern idea of content creation, because it's like that part of it, that grind part of it has gotten, I think, a little bit out of control, and it's a little bit unreasonable. Um, we have
Right. Yeah.
like an awesome group of listeners and supporters, so nobody ever like gives me a hard time of like, how come the episode is late? How come like I'm really upset that you guys. It's like some people drop off Patreon, and one of the reasons is that like they're like, oh, it's not like I wasn't happy with with this or that or whatever, right? But they never like, it's like that's the only time that I hear that complaint, is when people are like, I'm gonna stop giving you guys $1. And it's like, oh, okay, I mean that's cool. But for the most part, everybody is awesome, and just is like, okay, get it, like we can wait. And they're
Yeah.
super patient and stuff. So but yeah, but I know that out there in the universe, in the content creator universe, specifically like the podcast and YouTube world and Twitch streaming and all of that stuff, it's just like, it's so intense of like, if you stop producing content, the algorithm drops you, and then you're like, now your financial situation has changed, right? Because now you're not getting revenue from YouTube or Twitch or whatever. And yeah, I hate that. I hate it. I don't want to be slave to that algorithm. I want to create content that we are proud of and that we enjoy making,
Mm-hmm. I
but
mean,
like less in the,
that's I think.
like, I want to make something real, I think, is the big thing, right? And whether
Yeah.
whether or not we manage to reboot Student Bodies, which I think is like, it's such a shoot for the moon sort of concept.
Yeah.
Whether or not we do it, I don't care. I am hoping that by the end of this project, that we have something tangible that we can sit down and go like, we wrote 3 episodes of a sitcom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is not something that like it's something that I've always sort of thought of doing or dreamed of doing and never really done, never pulled the trigger, right? So like, let's make an excuse to keep ourselves accountable and like actually do that and create something for real.
Right. That for me is the part that is the most exciting, is that in going into all of these, because I really do want to make a feature film next year. I've never done that. I haven't made a feature film. I've done a lot of television. I've done a lot of short films. I've done a lot of various things, but I've never made a feature. And so I want to dive into actually doing that and find it and making space for it. And so exactly what you're talking about with the Student Bodies podcast, it's more the idea of us setting aside time to put our minds to something that we're using a platform that we already use and that we enjoy connecting and we enjoy creating together and making something tangible with it. And still creating, podcasts about pop culture, however old it might be. I don't know. It's just we're gonna make it a trend. We're gonna make it trend on Twitter. People care about Student Bodies, this obsolete show from the 90s. So great.
Yeah, well, and I mean, so I've been doing prep homework, and that prep homework is that I've been watching every episode of Saved by the Bell.
Nice.
Now this started before this concept came to fruition, but now I am watching it with a very critical eye for like, how are these episodes constructed, right? The other thing that Crystal and I have started watching a lot, she just started watching Golden Girls because it's on Disney Plus.
Oh yeah.
And let me tell you, that show is perfect. It is like, you know how I talk about Community, right? Like that Community is like, Community is like the postmodern sitcom, right? Like, and in that respect, it is the perfect like postmodern, like navel gazing, like, hey, let's deconstruct this medium in order to make the best stories in this medium possible, right? Like, it's very much the snake eating its own tail. And that's where I find joy, in that like meta narrative of Community, right? And then even the meta narrative of the Dan Harmon saga of that, and Harmontown, the podcast, and all of that stuff. Like I eat that up. Golden Girls is, pun intended, the absolute golden standard for what that is without meta commentary. There is no meta commentary. Right. There's no navel gazing involved. It's not postmodern. It is the pinnacle. It is the zenith of sitcom. It is. I am blown away when I watch this show, which I watched as a kid. Like, I loved Golden Girls as a kid, like, which is so ridiculous. And I know that there's a lot of other people in our generation that are like, it was like appointment viewing in our house. I watched it with my family, and
awesome.
I specifically with my parents, because my brothers didn't care as much about TV shows. But like, I watched that show every week, and I was a big fan of Empty Nest, which was the spin-off show from Golden Girls. I loved that stuff as a kid, and now going back and revisiting it as an adult, it's like, oh my god, this is so good. And so again, like A, I am just enjoying the hell out of that show right now, but B, I am watching it and going like, here it comes, here's the setup, and then there's like the way that they do it, it's so brilliant, the way that they pace jokes, because you'll get setup, punchline, setup, punchline. Like, it'll just like, like, it's like a machine gun, the way that it hits you with these jokes, to the degree that like, it's like, it's the bus analogy, right? It's like, oh, if you miss it, just wait 5 minutes, or there's another one coming. Like, every 30 seconds there's another joke. So if you missed a joke or it didn't land with you, don't worry, because like, maybe, like, I'm not that big of a fan of Rose. Like, I don't sorry, not Rose, Blanche. I don't like, I find her tiring and exhausting in a lot of ways. So a lot of her jokes don't necessarily land. I see the humor in it. It just doesn't work for me. But then Rose will do something stupid, and they'll be like, Rose, you're an idiot. Like, they'll just say that. They will literally just, that's the punchline to the joke, is that she'll tell some story about her, whatever she lives in, from some saint something or other in Idaho. I can't remember, but she'll tell her stupid story, and then like literally Dorothy will be like, Rose, you're an idiot, and that's the joke. And it's like, it'll like, that'll send me. And then my favorite, Sophia, will come in, and she'll just light up all three of them with one joke. And it's like, the show is so mean spirited. And I love it because it is exactly my sense of humor, where it's like, this is four people who love each other, but like like they have no filter. Like they're done, especially
Right.
Sophia. That's why she's my favorite, because she's got like the senility card. So she's just like, whatever, I'm a crazy old lady, I'll say what I want. And it just like it, like the way that the jokes are constructed is just like, it's a masterclass in television writing. And so like, I've been watching these two shows with Crystal, and the nostalgia of it has been fantastic, and I'm really excited to get into Student Bodies as well, and to sort of look, because it's a little bit further down the road, right? Like, and I think when we watch it, there'll probably be a lot of me looking at it and going like, okay, it is very self-referential to like the teen sitcom drama tropes, right? Like it'll play with the Saved by the Bell Degrassi stuff, and play it for jokes. So what's going to be interesting for us is like trying to figure out, deconstructing it, looking at it and going like, where's the balance of how meta are we going to make this? Do we want it to
right
be
versus yeah,
or do we want this to be more of a straight sitcom with some dramatic elements and that sort of thing, right? So I'm super excited to do all of that work, because it means that, like, because I will also be watching Community, as I always am watching Community, and bringing some of that into it as well, and trying to write stories to that caliber. Like, that's sort of the, for me, where I will aim, but probably fall very short of. But yeah, like, I just it's already, we haven't even really started. We've only kind of just begun, and we're just sort of in these brainstorming phases. And I'm already like, this is a very enjoyable endeavor, as opposed to what we've been doing for the last
feeling
10
like work.
years.
Yeah.
Like, the last 10 years, all we've been doing is just like picking apart other people's stuff.
Yeah.
With no
positivity or end goal,
with,
that is
like,
constructive.
with nothing produced. Our critique is what we're producing. Right. And so like, it's kind of, it's this is a bit of a challenge that we, are putting, I think, to our past selves, of like, put your money where your mouth is. You really think you could have written Arrow better than the people who wrote Arrow? Prove it. Right.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, hey, season 3, yes, I could have written some better episodes than some of those real stinkers. But yeah, I don't know, like, I'm super excited to do this. I'm super excited to get into it.
Nice. Yeah, it'll be good.
Do you want, let's discuss the show format.
Sure.
Do you have the Google Doc open?
I do. Well, I have it on my phone because I can't touch my computer because of technical difficulties. Yeah. Exactly. But I'll open it up on my phone. I love that this is just like the last few episodes of ThunderQuack are really going to be a transitional like undertaking, which is great. I don't know. Thanks everybody for still listening to us talk about random banana nonsense into the world.
By the way, while you're getting that opened up, I'll vamp for a second by giving people some bad news. Nuff Said is canceled. that one's also going to be gone. So we're not going to keep going with that one. Like I said, it's the same with the Star Wars one. It's just like, if we're doing this, we gotta I will quote Star Wars to express myself, because that's the only way I know how to communicate effectively.
So we're not doing a Multiverse of Madness?
No.
Go ahead, as Luke says.
Oh, well, It'll depend on timing.
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
we'll do Multiverse of Madness because we'll still be doing this other stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, like to quote Luke Skywalker, if we're going in full throttle. That's the only way to do this. It's the only way to
Wow.
do this. It's also
Okay.
the Ron
Yeah.
Swanson thing of like never do two things half-ass. Do one thing with your full ass.
That
And
is the second time that somebody has used that phrase with me today, which
yeah,
is so funny. But it's true. There's something about just like, yeah, diving in with both feet, which I like it. It's a recalibration. There's been a lot of podcasting for a long time. So I do have I don't know if you can see me I don't know if it shows up in the same way, but I am in the podcast ideas one. I have it open on my phone.
Okay, I don't see you in there, but that's okay.
I think
it's
I
not
don't have
it's not a
actual Google
particularly
Docs.
long.
That's why.
Yeah.
But I'm
Okay.
there. I see it.
So these are the two names at the moment that and Amanda, you haven't suggested anything yet.
I know. I haven't been thinking hard enough. I think I need to step up. To step up.
So the easier one is this is the concept is the name, which is you are. I see you now in the doc. The first suggestion is let's reboot Student Bodies. That's it. Just let's reboot Student Bodies. That's the title of the podcast. The other one is the very obvious, and it's a podcast, so everything's got to have a podcast pun in it, in the title, so that everybody knows that it's a podcast, and that is Student Potties. But when you say potties, it can sound like
so
potty,
terrible.
right?
Yes.
So I mean, like, I don't think we're going with that, but it's on the list. So that, Amanda, you have to come up with some names.
So that I have to come up with other names.
Yeah,
okay.
You have to come up with something else. I mean, like, let's reboot Student Bodies is literally like I don't know that we're gonna do better than that, because anything other than that's gonna be us trying to be clever, and I don't think that we need to be clever about it.
That's true.
But yeah, so those are the two possible names that we have at the moment. And then let me read the concept. Sorry, go ahead.
It's one of these unfortunate things that I think once we start watching, like really watching the episodes, we will come up with a really great name and then want to change the podcast. Because I feel like there'll be like inspiration that will be like, man. So okay, I'm gonna come up with some names. I'll try to come up with some names, but I do like the idea of let's reboot Student Bodies. But just because it's such a weird thing to create. Like it's like a fan podcast like 20 years later, but also for a purpose. So it's like I don't even know. Okay. You can talk about the concept though.
Okay, so the concept. Okay. Amanda Conkin, and then I've got in brackets seasoned television production expert. And Michael Cohen, and again, the description here in brackets, half decent illustrator, want to reboot the beloved Canadian cult classic teen sitcom, Student Bodies. But in order to do this, they're going to have to watch every single episode and break down what makes Student Bodies so great. Here's the thing,
and I
Amanda.
feel like instead of so great, you should say so adequate. But anyway, sorry.
No,
okay,
what's
great.
The
thing?
It is a great show.
What's the thing?
Here's the thing.
Yes.
Never before in pre-production on a podcast have I ever written down the concept of the show. Right? Because awesome. It was always just, I don't know, we're just going to recap episodes of Clone Wars. Like,
right.
Like that's it. Yeah. That's the concept.
Yeah.
But writing this concept,
this is solid.
I was like, this is an actual, like, that description is short and sweet. It gives you a little bit of an idea of who we are.
Yeah.
And it gets like either you're in or you're out. Like that's it. Like you read that description and either you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
That's what the show is. So I think the fact that we actually have that this time around means that like, oh, dang, like we've got something. This is actually something. This is actually a thing. It's not just you and I sitting on a couch having a conversation, as our other shows in the past have been. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
How do you feel about being referred to as a seasoned television production expert?
I mean, I do like it because it's accurate. I am a television production expert.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm kind of like, sure, it works. There's a lot of, I've been having this conversation recently with one of my friends who's she's doing a lot of like counseling, like school to be a counselor, and she's like very much has done like a lot of she does a lot of coaching and a lot of helping people. And so every time I talk to her, we talk a little bit about like who we are and like what we are. And one of the things that she recently asked about, because we chatted like when I landed here, we had a quick conversation, and she was like, how would you describe yourself? I'm kind of like, oh my goodness, what a loaded question. Because I don't know, it always changes. And I think in my head, when I have to sit down and write biographies, I come up with like whatever it is that I'm writing the biography for. And so I've never really thought about myself in general terminology, but I think that for this particular thing, I love the way that like it's an accurate representation of what I would be bringing to this particular podcast. So I like that. I don't know. That's a roundabout way of saying thank you for labeling me so that I didn't have to.
The problem is that then I have to label myself, and it has to be self-deprecating, because otherwise I'm conceited, right? So
yeah, well, I mean, it comes across. I mean, you get it, because it's like you're not half decent. You are a good illustrator, so you get that it's sort of a It has to be a
I think it fits with the tone of what the show is, right? Yeah. And also like it fits with the tone of student bodies, which it's like, as we talked about in the last episode of ThunderQuack that we recorded together, where we came up with the concept. One of the reasons we got onto it was like the cartoons are not great. They're not great illustrations. They're good. They're squiggly cartoons.
It's the early 2000s cartoons that they could make on a live action show schedule. I feel like it's like exactly representative of what it is.
So yeah, I feel like it fits with it, and I think, and I like, this is the thing, is that talking about student bodies to fans of student bodies, they will understand like what that means in context to us trying to create a reboot of the show. It's like, so what, like where do I come in to this? Like, if you're the TV expert, the production expert, how do we actually make a show? It's like, oh, well then he's the creative drive, right? Like the which, when you look at the original show, which we kind of briefly did in that conversation, it's like, oh, well, one of the executive producers was also the person who like designed all of the illustrations, right? Like all of the, like the characters are all his character designs and stuff. So it's like, oh, like, and that was where it came from. That's where this came from, is that we were talking about that, and it was like, wait a second,
we have the skills to do this.
If one of the creators of the show was literally a cartoonist, and that's one of the reasons why the show got made, like, we're sitting here with like, we've got these two halves, let's bring them together and do this thing. So I feel like it accurately describes that. If I was a really good illustrator, I'd be working in animation, right? So already. So I think it makes sense that I'm only half.
I will say, the industry is so desperate right now, Mike. You want to work in animation, all you got to do is put in a resume.
I do honestly, not. I do not.
I was going to say, that's the reason why you're not working in animation. It's not because of your skill set.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to work in animation? We need people.
I don't want to sit at a computer and just crank out frame after frame. No. Hey, one of the reasons why there's so many problems with getting people in the animation industry is that there's a lot of problems with the animation industry right now.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the problems have always been there, but we're getting to this point in society where people are like, wait a second, we actually don't have to do this. There are alternatives. Anyways, yeah, we picked a real interesting time to decide to try and produce a show that has animation in it. But that's
Yep.
okay. We'll just let our animators be unionized from the get go. Maybe that'll help. Okay, so here's the show format. This is man, there was something that I wanted to add to this. It'll come to me, but this is what I have written down. So we would have the intro, which would be pre-recorded, the same intro every week. It will introduce the two of us so that we don't have to introduce ourselves at the beginning of the show. We can just start the show. And then basically like we say hi, and then we will go into an episode synopsis, which is just sort of, like one or two sentences of what's the A plot and B plot of this specific episode of Student Bodies. And then we would go into sort of a more in-depth recap. This is not a watch along. We're not gonna sit through the whole episode. But we'll just kind of go through scene by scene, and kind of do what we generally do, which is talk about like I enjoyed this worked for me, this didn't. And then at the end, like after the recap, we go through sort of like point form notes of like what made this episode work and then what didn't work, so that we can sort of go, okay, what are the strengths of this particular story, and where did it fall flat, what didn't work for us, so that we can avoid putting that stuff into our show. And then we will do listener mail, and then based on what did work, what didn't work, and the listener mail, your guys' feedback, we will have some conclusions to draw at the end of the episode of sort of like, okay, so going into our production, like what are these things that we're gonna, what are basically our action items for, like, like what's something that we didn't think about that we need to add to the show, right? Like what's something that maybe we're putting too much emphasis on that, like, oh, they made that mistake too, right? So that we sort of are giving ourselves feedback on a regular basis. And then at the very end of every episode, we do a production update of okay, here's where we're at. This is what we've done recently, which will keep us sort of accountable. I don't know that every episode will have like any like a major thing to talk about, but yeah, that there will be a place for that of sort of like, okay, what did we hit any milestones lately? Have we talked to anybody? Are we
giving ourselves homework, I feel like, so that we keep ourselves accountable from place to place, even if it's just like, did we check off anything from last week that we were supposed to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
I like it.
So that's,
I don't know, I tend to work I tend to work better if somebody has a deadline for me, and then I am told to tell them whether or not I did the thing the next time we talk. So I think it'll work well for me to have that.
So I think, like, my goal is that by the end of the first season, that we have the first draft of the script, and we've got all of our pitch material basically ready to go. Right. Because like I said, like we are committed to doing the first, what is it? I think it's 23 or 24 episodes.
Yeah, the first season.
The first season. We are going to do that for sure, provided we actually enjoy this as much as we say we're going to enjoy this, and then also that we've got people listening to it. We'll probably continue on with the rest of the series. Another 24 episodes, I think, in season 2, and then 13 episodes in season 3.
You know what's awesome? Because I'm sure you already did this, but like because of the names, I'm trying to be like, okay, a name for the podcast. And so I've like just sort of Googled like podcast Let's Reboot to see like what is out there. And the like fourth hit I get is the podcast that we did called Let's Reboot Student Bodies on ThunderQuack, the post that you did, which I love. So
That's awesome.
I really like that idea, because here's the thing, Mike. The Let's Reboot Student Bodies, if we want to, it can be like it's like an idea that like we'll go through the first season of the show. And if we really are like, you know what, this is not the right show for us to reboot, which I can't imagine that would be the case. But it's a nice format to be like, let's reboot, and then whatever the show it is that we want to like go through painstakingly.
That was my thing, is that like it actually like the brand becomes Let's Reboot. And I'll tell you, I already know what the next season is, and this might be controversial for you.
Ooh. Okay.
Or the next series, like after we do Let's Reboot Student Bodies, I think maybe it's not the next one. Maybe we do another one after that. But if we were to continue doing this in perpetuity, Let's Reboot definitely has to be on there. And that's funny.
I love it.
Because you literally worked on the reboot of Reboot.
Yes, I did.
But here's the thing about that. Despite all of your guys' hard work and effort, that reboot failed. That reboot didn't go anywhere. So yeah, it's like, and I think that actually you are in a very, very good position a few years removed from that to look at it and go, how come? You know, like
I think one of the great learning things from that is to be like, how hard is it to actually reboot Canadian television from the 90s? Honestly, is one of the big learning experiences from that, because, and I mean, here's the ultimate thing, and I think people I don't know if this is like a behind the scenes, like why are we doing this? One of the things for like the podcast is that like people don't care unless you can prove that people care about the thing that you're trying to do. Yeah. Because I will say right now in the Canadian market, I highly doubt that if we came to somebody and we're like, there's this obscure 2000s television series that we would like to reboot, people would be like, why? What?
Yeah,
like,
here's an article.
Why?
Yeah, here's an article from EW in 2020 where they did this retrospective on it. And that's it. That's all that's happened in 20 years.
But it's like, it's a thing where it's like, you've got to prove, like, what is it that you can do and what's going to be new and interesting that people are going to like. And I mean, I will say it was really awesome. I'm very pleased that I was able to work on, I mean, that's like why I applied. Like my whole life is changed because there was a studio 2 blocks from my house that when I was applying for jobs as a production coordinator, I noticed the name Reboot and was like, hey, I like that show. Yeah. And like put in an application to be in animation and have never looked back. So like that show changed my life in so many significant ways. But one of the things that's really interesting for me about that, because I was a fan of the original show, we did something different. Like it was different because it had to be, because that's what we could sell. At least from, I mean, again, I was a production coordinator on the show. It's not like I had anything to do with anything on the project, so I can't talk about it with any sort of, like, I don't in any way
have any
insight into it.
You weren't in the rooms for those conversations.
Exactly. Yeah. But as a content creator and as somebody who is aware of the landscape of Canadian television, I am pretty sure that a lot of the conversations about that were like, how do you make it relevant? How do you make it new and exciting for like these kinds of audiences? And I will say the show did some really awesome things with like the render machines that they use, like it was done in the Unreal Game Engine, which was so cool. And there's like this whole online content that like I was really proud of and excited for, that were like these 3D or like 360 videos, and like the potential for it was really cool. But it's like that, it's like, how do you hook audiences and get them interested in content when it's like so oversaturated? And so just having a beloved property is not enough. You have to figure out why. And so for me, this idea of the podcast, because it's great for us to sit like one day and be like, this would be a great idea, for us to actually go through and deconstruct it and talk to the community and figure out why this show would be a good idea, is an awesome way to think about making content. I really love that. And and there's no reason why we can't do a let's reboot series for other things. So I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, I think one of the interesting things about that project, about the Guardian Code, right, was that it's not a bad show, right? Like
it's a great children's television show.
Yeah, like it's a very competent, well-made kids show in that sort of Power Rangers sort of style, right? But it has the reboot label on it, and I think that is actually like to its detriment, and I think like that's an interesting part of the conversation and something that goes into it of like and I think that's why it's like how close do we have to be to the source material in order to remain true to the spirit of it, while also moving it forward and making a show that is for an audience in 2022, right? Because that's exactly like that's the balancing act. And I think with the Guardian Code, it's like it's a really good example of going too far the other way. And interestingly, Mainframe did another project that was a reboot of a sort of beloved cult franchise. I mean, not that cult. It's one of the best-selling games of last year. But but like you guys also did Ratchet and Clank. Yeah. And Ratchet and Clank, the movie, was also like very well made, very competent, very good, and did not hit because it was way too slavish to the original content, to the original game.
So you have like the two sides of it, right? Where you're like, how close are you versus how far do you get away from it? What an interest. Yeah.
So like what is the balancing act, and how does I don't know, like what's a show that's been rebooted that's been really successful?
I don't even know.
Here's a really good example, and I think probably one of the best examples in the day and age that we're in, which is Cobra Kai, right? Where it's like Cobra Kai has its own identity, it is its own thing. It does not care about the things that are not important to its success. One of those things it does not care about is production value. It cares about telling a good story and staying true to the core ideology of the first film, really.
And this is the thing for me, is that if you don't tell me that it's Karate Kid, I have no idea, because it branded itself as its own thing. Cobra Kai, for the first bit that it was around and people were talking about Cobra Kai, I had absolutely no idea that it was tied to Karate Kid.
If you're not a hardcore Karate Kid fan.
If you're not exactly. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you use that as a way in for the hardcores, but market it as its own thing, then maybe that's where the success for something like that would have come from, right?
Well,
where it's like, and I don't know, like the Charmed reboot is getting another season. I don't know. There's so many things that have been rebooted. Gossip Girl got rebooted.
Yeah.
Like,
but okay, so
I don't know.
Here's another example that you might not immediately think of as a reboot, but it absolutely is. Smallville. And Smallville, there was a Superboy TV series in the 80s, right? And Smallville is essentially another Superboy series. It is a reboot in a way. It's a reboot of Superman as a character who has been rebooted so many times that we don't call them reboots anymore, right? It's just, here's a new version of Superman. But it really is. And what made Smallville successful in doing that, right? It stayed core to the ideals of the character and of the reason why we tell Superman stories, right? And then also it had an identity all its own, and it was unapologetic about that identity. It didn't care that a character like Chloe didn't really exist in comic books, right?
Yeah.
and really was like cribbed from Buffy, right? Like, I mean, like, let's be honest, that's exactly who that character is, right? Like, Chloe is definitely
Oh yeah.
just a Buffy character transposed onto Superman, right?
Yeah.
And she is in the Lois Lane archetype and all of that sort of thing, but it's the fast talking, oh, I cringe to say this, but that Whedon-esque Kevin Smith,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
Kevin
yeah.
Smith, I don't cringe
Yeah.
to say. Kevin Smith, I'm fine with. I
No,
should have
wait.
just said that
Yeah.
instead. But you guys, like, everybody knows what I mean when I say that, right? Like that, like mile a minute. There goes a pop culture reference. There goes a historical thing. Like you, like just like you're trying to keep up with this character. And that was Chloe, and it was like, but it works because that show, I mean, I just rewatched the first, I think, 10 episodes of Smallville not that long ago when I noticed that they were all on Amazon Prime. And that's as far into it as I got before I got distracted by something else. But I it was really fun watching those first few episodes and going like, wow, this show really knew what it was. Like that, and that I think is one of its strengths, and it's also where you see it falter going into like season 4 and season 5 was when it started to lose that identity. And it wasn't until like season 8 where it came back around and went, forget Smallville. We're in Metropolis now. Everybody lives in Metropolis. Stop going back and forth. Clark can go back and forth because he has super speed. But everybody's in Metropolis now. It's a Superman show. He's just not Superman yet. Like, this is Superman year 0. Let's go. And then all of a sudden the show got great again because all of a sudden it knew what it was. It knew what it wanted to be. So it's like, I think like we look at that stuff, we can take all of this stuff, obviously like our wealth of knowledge of these shows, and experience, you know, creating stuff, and boil this down and try and figure out like, where is the balance, what does make a good reboot. One of the things that I'm really interested to do as we do this is once I get through all of Saved by the Bell, and I mean all of it except for the new class. We're not talking about the new class. But all of Saved by the Bell into the movies, like the TV movies, and then the college years stuff, is to watch the new Saved by the Bell show and see what they did. Because if we were to, I mean, like, I think that is our strongest case right now to do a Student Bodies reboot, is that the Saved by the Bell reboot is having success. So
Right. Yeah.
It's like between that and Cobra Kai, I think it's like, hey, we've got a beloved early 2000s thing. By the time that we're in production, the 2000s will be the number one nostalgia thing instead of the 90s, because we're phasing out of that. I mean, like, flared pants are coming back, low rise bell bottoms are back in style.
Upsetting.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is that, like, before the high rise skinny jean, I was lamenting the lack of low-rise bell-bottoms because I had gotten so used to those. But now, looking back, I'm like, but no, high-rise skinny jeans are way better. I'm very sad. I'm very sad about this change.
It's all cyclical, though. Don't worry about it. They'll be back in another 20 years.
Yeah, when I'm old and shouldn't be wearing jeans anymore.
What do you...
So sad. I don't know.
Is there an expiration date on jeans? Are we not allowed to wear jeans after a certain age?
You know what?
As a man, I mean, obviously we have different rules. As a man, I can wear jeans until the day I die.
Exactly. But I don't know. I feel like there's like mom jeans have a different connotation, right? And like that, which I feel like the nomenclature for mom just means like older lady. But like I was told that the 2000s would be when like real cool like space wear would come in, and like I want some sleek like nylon that can take me to the moon. Like I just am upset that is not really seeming to be realized, and we're still like touting denim. So oh my gosh, there's a new movie. There's a new movie coming out called Moonshot, by the way, with Cole Sprouse, Dylan Sprouse, one of the Sprouses, and the chick from To All the Boys I Loved Before, Laura I forget her name. Anyways, I'm excited for it. But it's like the concept is that like he sneaks onto this like rocket ship to Mars, and they like just have like a love, like she like hides him in her bedroom. Anyways, sorry, I was thinking about moonwear as opposed to jeanwear. So I don't know. Maybe in 20 years we'll get some different fabrics.
When do we all get
jeans.
our V-stripe jumpsuits? Right.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about. Right?
Exactly. Basically, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So.
I mean, like this is my thing is that like I don't particularly think that those outfits are flattering for every body type. I suppose correct. if we all can agree that this is just what we're doing now, that we just, that it doesn't matter because it's like, oh, fashion doesn't matter. But this is the thing is that if you took away the choice of clothing in fashion, then body type is the only and hairstyle, like those are the only recourse, right? So then all of a sudden it's like, well, do you have a fashionable body type or not?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Which is, and I will say, as a closeout for this podcast, because it has nothing to do with what we've been talking about, but because of where I am while I'm podcasting, because I'm in Indonesia, and Indonesia is a predominantly Muslim country, I'm thinking a lot about what I wear while I'm here. And the unfortunate thing is that I had sort of thought a little bit about wearing longer things to cover my legs. Like I was like, well, you know what? I have a lot of maxi dresses and I've got a few things, but like, I'm like, I can wear shorts around the pool and all that stuff. And like, while I'm at the resort, and I don't feel too bad about it. But the thing I didn't really think about is my shoulders. Like I have only tank tops with me. Like I have nothing that covers my shoulders. And I'm looking around and being like, there is nobody wearing tank tops. And it's such an interesting thing for me to have to try to figure out how to navigate that and be like, I didn't really think about it that much. Anyways, I was talking to somebody while I was again, but that thing about like clothing being such a, when you don't have to necessarily think about it, because there's a lot of people that just wear, they just cover themselves up, and they just have to think less about the particular like style choices that they're making every day. I don't know. But I have like from childhood wearing shirts that had the opportunity to give me pit stains had forever made it so that I removed all clothing with sleeves from my wardrobe as I've grown older, because it's just a thing that I am so attuned to for myself. And it's the first time that I've really had to come to grips with that while I'm here. I mean, the good thing is that I wear so many, I feel like we've talked about this on the podcast before, that like in the winter I wear scarves, and then in the summer I wear those like shawl things that go over, that are basically like a summer version of a scarf. They're basically like beachwear, but I wear them all the time as like little shawls. So I'm just wearing a lot of shawls. It looks like I'm at the beach perpetually. But I feel like people will probably be okay with that because I'm a white lady and I can get away with it.
Yeah, I think that they just like
look at me. They just judge me. They just judge me a little bit, and that's okay. I'm doing my best. But anyways, clothing. So jeans. I don't even know what we were talking about. Oh yeah, the 90s going out of style. What a way to get to clothing. But it's agreed. So
see, that's the sort of thing that on the Student Bodies podcast that I'll just cut.
Come on, it's so relevant to our conversation. So relevant.
And I'll go. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna make it into the show. Let's reset and then I have to find the clean break in editing later.
Sorry about that.
But then if you're paying us $10 a month, you're gonna still get that nonsense. So that's what you have to look forward to. See, there we go. Bring it all back around. Loop it all back together. I mean, like, I personally think that there's also an art to what we do with conversational podcasts, where it's like, how do we self-edit and just keep the conversation going, not have lulls, and just sort of put together an hour and a half of content every other week.
And I didn't think about that really until the first time I had Ryan on the podcast and I started recording and started talking. And like, after I talked for like a good 3 minutes, he's like, wait, are we podcasting? And I'm like, yeah, this is podcasting. He's like, no, what am I supposed to say? I'm like, we're supposed to just have a conversation. Is that not how podcasting works? So it's a skill. I feel like it's such a funny thing because it also has shaped the way that you and I talk to each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like even when we're not recording, we self-edit a little bit because we're so used to it. It's how we... So as much as people think that this is a fully unedited and like unabridged, there is some... We'll get better at it when we have to be less tangential. Because we found a way to yeah, well, maybe not.
I don't know.
Fine.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how much work it ends up being for me. Maybe I'll regret ever saying that this is going to be well produced and professional sounding.
There you go. You will.
Yep. Cool. I think that's it. I think we did it. I think we've made a case for our new show.
It's true.
And I await feedback on our concepts and the new Patreon scheme and all of that sort of thing. I'm interested to hear from you guys. What do you think about it? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think I have to, because the sign off, I was like, I don't want to throw this to you in the sign off. And I'm going to do just my normal sign off, but I do have to say two things before we end, because we didn't talk about politics at all.
Yeah.
We just want to say that on this podcast, we do say gay. So hearts out to all of the conversations happening in Florida right now, breaking our hearts, and to everything going on in the Ukraine right now. It's such an odd time to be alive with such weird. I mean, again, it's just sort of heartbreaking things happening every day. So everybody stay safe. So my stay safe will have those two contexts in them today when I sign off, but I just felt like I needed to actually say that on the podcast proper rather than couch them in the...
Yeah. Also, sort of while we're on this, this podcast is, the ThunderQuack community is and always will be a safe place for LGBTQIA plus all of it. But very specifically right now, if you are trans and feeling very specifically targeted, know that Amanda and I very specifically support you, and you are as valid as anybody else, no matter what the ridiculous Republican agenda has to say about it. And what's happening in Texas right now is beyond a political snafu. And is into, I mean, I said this on the podcast that I recorded yesterday, like, it's straight up Nazi territory. This is several steps down the slippery slope into round them up and exterminate them sort of thing. So just be I think for everybody to be aware that that's kind of where we're at right now with American politics and how much it's been polarized, is that stuff like that is not just getting through, but like it has major support, which is really upsetting and very dangerous. And so just, I think the other thing that I will note is that, yes, this very specifically targets people in Texas. That's where this law is. It's targeting children specifically, and their parents in Texas, caregivers, and that sort of thing.
And I think there's new information from today too about that. I think very, very blissfully, I think that there is a temporary like halt on the I think a judge.
But just I would say like check in with your trans friends no matter where they are in the world right now, and just let them know that you support them, and trans and non-binary, that you support them, and that they belong in your circle, because I think that a lot of people could use that sort of support right now, because it's not just happening in Texas. I mean, like there's legislation all over the United States, and obviously in other parts of the world, it's a different conversation sort of everywhere you go. Thankfully, we live in Canada, and at least on a federal level, and I think even on most provincial levels, those. I might regret saying this because I'll get people telling me all the horrible
something
things
bad's going to happen in Canada in the next.
But I like to think that at least, from what I know, and certainly on the surface, that we are much more inclusive and much more tolerant I hate the word tolerant in these conversations because I don't tolerate trans and non-binary people. Like that's like saying like, I'm really tolerating this air right now. It's like they
Right,
exist.
no,
They exist.
no,
There's nothing
no,
to
no.
tolerate. They're people. But in sort of using that language, right? The way that it gets used. I think
and I mean
that
our
we're
one
much
win
more accepting.
Yeah, and I think our win earlier in the year with banning conversion therapy is a really good step in the right direction. So.
Yeah. So
we're
so
trying.
yeah, just
I think there's places. Yeah.
If you're out there and you are feeling pressure or heat from any of this stuff that's going on right now, just know that we're in your corner. And hey, here's one thing: if we're not doing enough, let us know, and we will do more. That's sort of my promise. There is that I want to make sure that I am doing the appropriate things, and but also not soapboxing and white knighting and all of that sort of stuff. It's being an ally is tough. It's not as tough as being the person who needs allies, but it's just like it's a tightrope. It's a tightrope, but let us know where we could be doing better, and we will endeavor to do that. But I don't know. This feels sappy and it feels corny, but I'm gonna say it anyways. We love you guys. And you're a part of our community, and I use guys as a completely gender neutral term, but folks, I try and use folks every once in a while as well because that's gender neutral. But I don't know, man. I've been watching a lot of Queer Eye with Crystal lately, and it's like, man, it takes all. This is one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite shows, Mission Hill, animated sitcom. From the early 2000s. It's a real specific time in my life, but there's a quote in that it takes all kinds of fruit to make fruit cup, and I've mentioned that before on the podcast. I've talked about that before. It is one of my favorite sayings, and it's not widely known. It is definitely like something that one of the writer's parents said, and it made its way into that show. But I take that to heart, that like, man, like it does. It takes all kinds of fruit to make fruit cup. If all you got is apples and oranges, then you just have apples and oranges. That's not a fruit cup, right? You gotta have variety. You gotta have spice. You gotta have all of that.
I mean, I don't want a spicy fruit cup, but I understand the sentiment, Mike. So that's good.
Cinnamon is a spice. You could throw a little bit of cinnamon on some fruit, and make us something different. Let's see. You have some fun with it. Stop being closed-minded, Amanda.
I'm sorry. That is true. I should be more inclusive with my understanding of what a fruit cup is. Yeah, it's good. I'm gonna go eat some pineapple. It's gonna be good.
Okay, go eat some pineapple. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for coming on this ridiculous journey with us. Thank you for supporting us. And I'm really looking forward to the next few weeks as we figure out what this is going to be and get ready to launch our new show. It's exciting. Cool. That's it. We're done.
Stay safe, everybody. Oh. Yeah. Oh, I was doing my ending.
No, go ahead. Do it.
Now I will. Stay safe, everybody. Wash your hands and be kind to one another.
Follow the ThunderQuack Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the ThunderQuack Podcast. You can support us in 3 ways. First, by heading to the podcast service of your choice and leaving a rating and review. Second, by going to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merch from your favorite podcasts. And last but not least, by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack to kick in with your monthly pledge of support and get cool rewards like early access and extended episodes. The ThunderQuack Podcast is the official podcast of thunderquack.com. Head to thunderquack.com to discover more great podcasts.